Chancellor, distinguished guests, it's my great pleasure to welcome you all to the 2018 Foundation Day celebrations. Foundation Day marks the inauguration of the university in 2004, and it's the most prestigious day in our calendar. My welcome is also offered on behalf of our Chancellor, Lem Sisse, the Chair of our Board of Governors and Pro-Chancellor, Edward Astle, and members of our board. I'm delighted our civic guests are present, and we also welcome the founders of the university, Professors John Gardside, Sir Martin Harris, and Dr. Roger Pannoni. Their foresight in embarking on the creation of this institution is honoured here each year. I'm very pleased that a significant number of our alumni and donors have been able to join us, including those from our North American Foundation of the University of Manchester, NAFM, our Global Leadership Board, GLB, and our Hong Kong Foundation. This is the first time they have ever come together in Manchester. This year marks the 20th anniversary of NAFM and an independent foundation set up to foster networks between the university and our North American alumni, to promote our work and to raise vital funds. NAFM has already raised over $10 million for scholarship and research. Our GLB, consisting of key university donors and supporters, is also celebrating its 10th birthday, and we're grateful to the board for its sound advice and commitment to promoting Manchester and higher education more broadly. Our Hong Kong Foundation, a little younger at 6 years, continues to promote and support our work in this region, and it's fitting that today's foundation lecture will be given by Dr. Gerald Chan, who was born in Hong Kong and is a scientist and a businessman. The foundation lecturer will sign the university's foundation declaration when the formal proceedings end. The text of that is in your programmes, and it summarises our values, and the annual signing reaffirms our commitment to our future ambitions. After Gerald's lecture and questions, we'll show a short film highlighting our work in industrial biotechnology, one of our 5 research beacons. We'll then move on to the conferment and honorary doctorates by our Chancellor. Today, as well as Gerald, we will also honour Professor Emmanuelle Charpentier, Ms. Rachel Haugh, Ms. Sarah Lancashire, and Professor Chintamani N.R. Rao. Congratulations in advance to all of you, and very happy birthday, Sarah. First, I'll give you a brief update on the university, the external environment, the challenges, and the uncertainties ahead, and tell you a few of our many successes. I described a number of challenges to you last year, and I'm afraid that these persist as we face the prospect of major changes, notably in terms of our funding, depending on a government-led review of tertiary education, and of course, uncertainty still over Brexit. Last year was a particularly difficult one for universities like ours due to the proposed changes to pensions, and we all very much hope that we will reach a resolution to this in the near future. The external environment for UK universities over the next 5 years will continue to present a range of challenges as well as opportunities. It's therefore timely that we are currently consulting our staff, students and friends of the university about its future as we approach 2004, which is both the 20th and the 200th anniversary of our university. Over the past year, under each of our 3 core goals, in research and innovation, we've attracted over £300 million of external research income. We've established 5 new interdisciplinary research institutes and launched 2 cross-university initiatives, Creative Manchester and Digital Futures. We rose to our highest position yet in the Shanghai Jiaotong International Ranking of Universities, 34th, and we are also ranked as the most popular university by UK businesses and collaborations. A world-leading precision medicine campus is set to open in Corridor Manchester Enterprise Zone, and we joined the National Alan Turing Institute. And of course, GCHQ, that is moving a significant number of staff here, will fund a Heilbronn Institute for mathematical research. And that is just a small snapshot. In teaching and learning, we remain the most popular university for undergraduate applications, and recruitment is strong in spite of many challenges in the UK, while international student applications have grown significantly. Non-continuation of our graduates, an important measure for us, those that drop out, is less than 4%, and graduate employment is high. We continue to recruit a high proportion of our students from the most disadvantaged backgrounds. Our Manchester Access Programme and Equity and Merit Scholarships have supported thousands of disadvantaged students with the generous support of our donors. Many of you are here today. We've created University of Manchester Worldwide to facilitate distance and blended learning with centres around the world. And our students continue to participate in wide educational experiences known as Stellify, including 5,000 who recently took part in our Ethical Grand Challenges. In this year's National Student Survey, the university received 83% satisfaction rate, the same as the average of the Russell Group, which is not high enough. We're currently investing in a new student experience project to support students throughout their university life. Today is World Mental Health Day, and we know that the difficulties that mental health can bring. So I'm very pleased that we, together with the other universities in Greater Manchester and Greater Manchester Health and Social Care Partnership, have launched a new initiative funded jointly between us for a dedicated fast-track student mental health support service. We remain the only university in the UK to have social responsibility as a core goal. Our successes include our unique employment initiative, The Works, which has supported over 4,000 people back into work. Our School Governor initiative is the largest in the UK, with over 900 staff and alumni who are contributing their leadership skills to state schools. A record 1.3 million members of the public engaged with our cultural institutions, the Manchester Museum, the Whitworth, Jodrell Bank Discovery Centre and the John Rylands Library. Our capital programme is progressing well, and we have several official openings coming up. I seem to have my diary filled with topping out ceremonies and openings, and these include the Graphene Engineering Innovation Centre, known as the GEEK, and the Alliance Manchester Business School. The huge Manchester campus engineering development that you may go past on Upper Brook Street will bring all of our students onto the same site, will reduce our running costs and our carbon footprint, and will, of course, create a major site in the city centre known as North Campus. We're seeking a partner to develop the site for high-tech R&D businesses with the potential to generate £2 billion of growth and 6,000 jobs. We recognise, though, the value of a green, healthy environment and are including space for this in all of our campus developments. And this is detailed in our Living Campus plan. In the last year alone, we've planted over 100 trees, launched a tree trail across the campus, and completed the transformation of Brunswick Street to Brunswick Park. And if you looked at that today, you would see many hundreds of students sitting out and enjoying the usual Manchester sunshine. So it's been a difficult year in many ways, but we do have a lot of successes to celebrate and opportunities we must grasp. It's now my great pleasure to say just a few words about our foundation lecturer, Dr. Gerald Chan, before inviting Gerald to come up to deliver the 2018 foundation lecture. You'll be hearing a little more about Gerald's life when I present him for his honorary doctorate. So suffice it to say for now that Gerald co-founded the Morningside Group and he's director of the Morningside Foundation. He's a great supporter of education and of universities, and he's a great entrepreneur and scientist. And his lecture will be entitled Biotechnology, the Conflation of Science, Business and Ethics. Gerald, can I invite you up? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm certainly very honored to be here with you all. Now, I'm supposed to talk about biotechnology. I will start with my own journey in biotechnology, which began when I started my postdoctoral training. After finishing my doctoral work, I had to choose a place to do my postdoc, and I was attracted to this one lab which was studying DNA damage by ultraviolet light using DNA of defined sequence. Now, those were the very early days of recombinant DNA, and we did DNA sequencing by hand. Now, we look back now and can only marvel at the crudeness and the labor intensity of science a mere 30-some years ago. But my choice for my postdoctoral training was emblematic of the aspiration of life science at that juncture, of moving from phenomenologic observations to molecular explanations. That pivot ushered in a golden age of life science in which we still find ourselves today. Our understanding of the molecular basis of life has exploded, and equally gratifying is to see the expeditious translation of such new discoveries into clinical medicine and related products for the improvement of human health. This collective effort of translational science, carried out not in academia, but in a commercial setting, spawned a nascent industry that we now call biotechnology. Rather than making a new medicine by trial and error, as practiced by the pharmaceutical industry of old, the biotechnology industry is informed by life science articulated in molecular terms. The old pharmaceutical industry that grew out of the chemical industry gave way to a new industry that is led by biology. I'm fortunate to have started investing in the biotechnology industry from the early days. For someone who came from a family in the real estate business in Hong Kong, and I want to pay particular tribute to my compatriots from Hong Kong, that was quite a drastic departure. But in reality, there are more common features between the property business and the biotechnology business than what meets the eye. Property is the ultimate example of real assets. If my property occupies the city's busiest street corner, no one else can own that corner nor create another corner exactly like it. People can build buildings, but no one can make land. Land is the most irreproducible of all assets, and its financial value is underpinned by its irreproducibility. There is therefore an aspect of natural monopoly in real estate. Professor Eric Posner of the University of Chicago has recently introduced the concept of a new tax on real estate, taking into consideration this implicit monopolistic character. In contrast, intellectual property, which is a stock in trade for biotechnology, they are difficult to create but relatively easy to reproduce. This is why we have patents to protect inventions. The financial value of an innovative drug is underpinned by the patent protection. The same chemical molecule as a generic drug costs a fraction of the same drug before patent expiration. Hence, both the property business and the biotech business possess monopolistic characters. The difference is that the monopoly of properties can be perpetual as long as property right is protected by law, whereas the monopolies that stem from patent protection have expiration dates. Now, it may further surprise you if I say that the biotechnology business also shares certain characteristics with the creative industry. Novelists write novels, musicians compose songs, scientists make scientific discoveries. The former are protected by copyright, the latter by patents. A novelist enjoys copyright for 70 years, whereas a scientist's patent protection is only good for 20. While patents and copyrights are instruments designed to protect the financial interests of the asset creator, we must not lose sight of their value to society. As early as the 18th century, the founding fathers of America thought it necessary to devote one clause of the nation's constitution to addressing this matter. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8 of the American Constitution states, "To promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive rights to their respective writings and inventions." That's in the American Constitution. Left open is the question of how limited should the limited time be? Thomas Jefferson wrote that patent life should be just long enough to encourage innovation, but not a day longer. Clearly recognizing the duality of the function of patents to encourage innovation if patent life was not too short, as well as the ability to stifle innovation if patent life was too long. Now, lest we should be unduly pessimistic about industries whose asset value is sustained by ephemeral patent protection, these industries do have a redeeming feature characterized by unlimited plenitude. Without this countervailing feature, the ephemerality will bring the industry to a standstill. Just as the world has yet to run out of literature after centuries of human writing, there is not the faintest indication that science is about to run out of new discoveries. One historical document that captures this concept of the supply of science being infinite is the Master Plan for the Scientific Research Establishment in post-World War II America, written by a man named Vannevar Bush. He was commissioned by President Franklin Roosevelt to draw up the plans of how science should look like in America after the war, and he entitled his report, "Science, the Endless Frontier." For students of history, the image of an endless frontier will hark back to the frontier as the dominant idea of making sense of American history as propounded by the historian Frederick Jackson Turner. 18th and 19th century Europeans had never seen a nation develop where there was an endless supply of land as the settlers in America continuously pushed the frontier of the nation. While the Europeans fought over the same piece of land time after time over centuries, the settlers in America simply went further westward to possess more virgin land. So it is in business today. While the property moguls fight over the same street corner, or the private equity folks fight over the same old companies, those of us who work in biotechnology, we simply create more new companies with novel or hitherto unwrought scientific discovery. The biotechnology sector has yet to be opportunity constrained, rather it is perpetually capital constrained. Now, invoking classical economics, the concern may rightly be raised that if the supply of science which fuels the biotechnology industry is infinite, biotech companies would have very weak pricing power for their products. The reality is, in fact, the contrary. There are few sectors that have such strong pricing power for their products as the biotechnology sector. We now have this drug called Harvoni, which is for hepatitis C infection, and it is priced at $1,125 per pill to be taken over 12 weeks daily. The cancer drug Revlimid costs $600 per pill, and this works out to $18,500 for a 28-count bottle. The drug is to be taken as maintenance therapy for as long as the cancer is in remission. Therapeutics for rare diseases routinely run into several $100,000 per year, and the use of these drugs are lifelong. Many forces contribute to the high cost of novel medicine. I cite but two for today's discussion, with a disclaimer that my words should by no means be construed as my justifying the current state of affairs in pharmacoeconomics, nor the practice of pharmaceutical companies continuously increasing the price of approved drugs. First, whereas the supply of science as the raw material to biotechnology is infinite, the cost to develop the science into product is excruciatingly slow and capital intensive. The capital intensity comes from the development process being highly regulated by government agencies such as the FDA in America or the European Medicine Agency here. Any industry whose product matters for the safety of the citizenry must necessarily be subject to government oversight. With the medicines that we take, our confidence does not only rest on the prescribing physician's qualification as certified by professional bodies, it also rests on the knowledge that any medicine on the market has gone through an unbiased approval process administered by the government. The capital intensity in biotechnology is therefore a price that society pays for the assurance that the drugs on the market are both safe and efficacious. It follows that for any economy that wants to build a biotech industry, there must be sufficient financial capital in the system committed to this endeavor. Britain is a classic case of a nation with superb science, but a scarcity of financial capital for developing the science into commercial products. This imbalance has plagued the British economy perpetually since the dawn of the biotechnology industry, even though many of the scientific discoveries that gave birth to biotechnology came from this country. If the perceived risk-reward ratio is insufficiently attractive for attracting private capital into this sector, either government funding or philanthropic capital will have to step in to fill the gap. Given that it is so costly to develop novel drugs, it also follows that market players in this industry will only develop drugs that can be sold for high prices. Pharmaceutical companies have most often used as benchmark for pricing a novel drug the cost of providing care for the patient if the drug was not available. For example, the high price of that hepatitis C drug that I talk about, it's justified by the cost of care for the patient without this medication, who would eventually develop liver cirrhosis, necessitating liver transplant, or liver cancer. This is the logic behind the $1,000 pill. Economics undoubtedly also underlies the recent decision by the pharmaceutical company Novartis to stop making antibiotics. The fact that a short course of antibiotics does cure infections is also the reason why antibiotics do not make for a good pharmaceutical business. A patient cure is a customer lost. Contrast that to the disease-modifying drugs that require lifelong use. They are annuities to the drug companies. So just as the threat of multi-drug resistant bacteria is more dire than ever before, the economic disincentive for developing novel antibiotics is also greater than ever before. The second reason I cite for the extraordinary pricing power of the biotechnology sector is the inelastic demand for these products. Because they matter to people's well-being, including in some cases life or death, the demand for biotech products is extremely inelastic. This demand inelasticity is as stubborn as the survival instinct in human nature. Add to this demand inelasticity the protection of patents that precludes competition, it is no wonder that biotechnology companies have virtually monopolistic pricing power once a drug is approved by the regulatory agency. Without checks and balance from non-economic forces, the biotechnology sector can easily lead to market abuse or market failure. The societal ramifications of biotechnology pose many challenges to the notion that this sector can operate in an unfettered free market under a laissez-faire government. Whether the demand for biotech products should be so inelastic is as much an ethical question as an economic one. At the heart of this question is, how much is a human life worth? And do all human lives have the same worth? In countries where healthcare cost is borne by the public sector, as long as demand exceeds capacity, rationing of shared resources will always create ethical dilemmas. There must therefore be a methodology applied to quantifying the amount of justifiable spend on each patient that can serve as a basis for fairness. Perhaps the best attempt to providing such a quantitative framework is that used by the National Institute of Health and Care Excellence here in Britain, and the methodology called QUALI, Q-U-A-L-I, developed in the 1970s, imputes an economic value of a patient to society and measures that against the cost of a proposed medical intervention. The Americans have always been unwilling to accept such calculations and leave the pharmacoeconomic decision to the individual or to the market. This is quite in keeping with American sensibilities in two regards. Number one, an absolute belief in the sanctity of life and therefore its value being incalculable. And number two, the can-do attitude of Americans even when it comes to the challenge of defying death. It is no wonder that healthcare expenditure is so unbridled in America. But for all its ideological loftiness, the Americans have little to show for their money spent. Whereas Americans spent 18% of its GDP on healthcare, the life expectancy of Americans ranked number 37 in the world. The place with the highest life expectancy in the world today is Hong Kong. Where the male can expect to live on average 81.2 years, and females a whopping 87.3 years. It is therefore all the more stunning that the healthcare expenditure of Hong Kong is only 6% of GDP. Half of that is self-pay, and half of that is from the public sector. This is yet another way Hong Kong has something to show the world, although we really have no explanation why Hong Kong people live so long. That is a research project. Some years ago, an oncology friend in Hong Kong related to me a rather poignant story of an economically rational end-of-life decision. He had a patient who was suffering from end-stage liver cancer. The next line of therapy for this patient would be this drug, Nexavar, which costs roughly $50,000 for a course of therapy. Clinical trial experience showed that this therapy would prolong survival for about 2 months. The financial net worth of this patient was about $100,000. He reasoned that undergoing treatment with Nexavar would halve the inheritance that he would be able to leave to his children. He opted to forego the therapy and the additional 2 months of life. It is always heart-wrenching when someone is forced to name a monetary price for a human life and to execute a transaction over it. The story of this liver cancer patient took place in Hong Kong, where this therapy was self-paid. For such patients and their families, the decision to treat or not to treat is a matter of conscience. For societies where there is socialized medicine, the cost is transfer from the patient to the taxpayers at large. How then should the ethics of society paying $50,000 for a couple extra months of one older person's life It is a question of resource allocation as befitting that society's conception of the value of a human life and of a good society, subject to the reality check that no society commands infinite resources. The ethics is above all an intergenerational one, for it is the taxes of the living paying for the life extension of the dying. Intergenerational ethical dilemmas will only become more vexing as population life expectancy continues to increase. The most grave threat may well come from the growing burden of Alzheimer's disease. This is one disease where the biotechnology industry has utterly failed to deliver. Billions of dollars later, Alzheimer's disease is the biggest graveyard of failed clinical trials. I applaud the Cameron government for bringing the Alzheimer's problem to the fore of the national awareness. There is at least a public dialogue in this country on the potential of caring for Alzheimer's patients bankrupting our society. We must furthermore be cognizant that finance alone will not suffice to solve this problem, as high-income countries are also facing a demographic headwind. In these countries, there will not be enough young people to take care of the senior folks. Their demographic structure, never seen in human history, is perhaps an unexpected consequence being reaped by the generation that invented both modern medicine and pharmacologic birth control. Any intergenerational ethical dilemma is a manifestation of a struggle between the past and the future. It is in the light of this struggle that we see the university as a very unique institution in human society, which at once does the work of preserving the past and enabling the future. The University of Manchester stands as a shining example. Rooted in the dynamism and creativity of the Industrial Revolution, this university has not ceased to push the frontier of science and culture. For many of my Hong Kong compatriots present here, British universities held a special meaning. It was to British universities that many from the former colonies came to be educated. Here, they acquired their professional competence and their cosmopolitan sensibilities. Through training the future leaders, British universities have had a large role in shaping the post-colonial world order. They remain one of the most powerful levers for Britain to exercise its soft power. Equally commendable is the city of Manchester, in which this university is situated, and with which there is a close working relationship as I have never seen between town and gown anywhere. I'm reminded that it was here in Manchester city centre that Marx and Engels met. The big questions they raise still demand answers today, all the more in the face of the glaring inequalities of our society today. So I'm honored today to become a Mancunian. As Nancy knows, I'm acquiring a Mancunian accent. And in particular, to join my friends from Hong Kong as an alumnus of this great university. So for this honor that you bestow on me, I'm most grateful. Thank you very much.
So I've read many of Gerald's speeches, and I knew from reading them what a great foundation lecturer he would be, and it's a pleasure that I'm listening to him here at the University of Manchester. So thank you, Gerald. Gerald has agreed to answer a few questions, and we have time for a few, and I think we have a roving microphone if there are a few questions. Nobody's looking. Come on, colleagues. Oh, I've got two now. Kieran and one there. One here. Can we come round this, down the middle for both? The lady here, and then Kieran down there on the right.
Hello, I'm Catherine. I'm representing the Royal Society of Chemistry. And mine is just really an observation here. Oh, gosh. You quoted the price for pharmaceuticals in dollars, and there isn't a worldwide price for pharmaceuticals, I believe, because, well, I know the NHS, with its buying power, has managed to get Tagrisso for somewhat better than the Americans. Do you have any comments on that with the social form of medicine and the personal form of medicine? Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah. So, for the Western European countries where you have basically a single buyer, for the whole country, there is considerable more leverage in bargaining with the pharmaceutical company for prices. The fact of the matter, if you talk to people in the pharmaceutical company, is that it is almost impossible for them to make much profit out of Western Europe, which is the way it should be. So the big profit of the pharmaceutical companies really are made mainly in America, and then in some of the emerging markets, where there is a good self-pay, population. Countries like China, Russia, depending on the particular medicine. But America, in many ways, is really holding up, the pharmaceutical companies. So you're right that there is no uniform pricing across the world. Some pharmaceutical companies have tried to soothe their conscience by offering drugs at very, heavily discounted prices, to countries, low-resource countries. And that, of course, is good. You remember the case, of the HIV drugs, about 20 years ago, when GSK refused to discount it. It turned into a massive scandal, and they, had to backtrack.
Thank you. Kieran?
Hi, thanks so much for a really exciting lecture. You talked a lot about some of the challenges and problems of the pharmaceutical industry and drug discovery in the kind of the new biotech age. And you also talked about Vannevar Bush and the Science the Endless Frontier report in the US heralding the start of kind of post-war taxpayer-funded support for science. So can I ask you what you think the future role is for taxpayer-funded science in this new world of drug discovery, in this new kind of post-big pharma, post-traditional pharma world of drug discovery?
Well, in that original report from Vannevar Bush, he, lay out this schema of basic research and then, applied research, basic research to be done in universities and applied research to be done in commercial in companies. Now, that distinction really has been blurred. And I see many universities now even working farther downstream, and I do applaud that. And in many ways, universities are using that as a means for attracting and retaining faculty. I remember in the days that I was a graduate student, my professor was trying to start a biotech company, and it was as if he was trying to do something immoral and unspeakable, and he had to do it, at nighttime behind everybody's back. But today, if you were a professor, especially in the life sciences, and if you didn't have a company, you're really second-class citizen. So that, culture has been changed, and I absolutely support the blurring of that boundary between, university research and industry research. The question then, as you had raised, is who pays for it? University research, I am still a big believer and a big champion in the public sector supporting that. So much of what we enjoy today really comes from that era, that post-World War II era, when there was such copious funding of science in America. I mean, that has turned out so much good for the whole world. I still think if you look at the NIH budget, which is like, what, $30-some billion, in the greater, scope of things of how America is run, that is like a drop in the bucket. So increasing, science is absolutely something that I feel, the public sector should do. And there needs to be citizens who speak out and put pressures, on the MPs, in this country to do that. And I hope, that things won't happen, much more, beyond what we are experiencing in America, with this sort of anti-intellectual, anti-science, climate that the current administration has brought in. Having said that, last year's budget in America, the budget for NIH actually went up.
John, I think we'll probably have to be the last one, unfortunately. John?
Gerald, thank you very much indeed. I'm ex-pharmaceutical industry, and if we were to give your talk to all of our graduates heading for the pharmaceutical industry, it would raise most of the critical ethical questions for today. I wish I'd been educated with that when I started. I'm retired now. A different sort of question, though. You talked about the lack of capital capacity in the UK that was commensurate with the amount of research that we're investing. And so, for instance, in the public sector, I think there's approximately £1.5 billion per annum going to the Medical Research Council, the National Institute of Health Research, and probably another £1 billion, if you add it all together, from the medical charities. So if you take a round figure, say £2.5 billion, what would be your guideline for the capital capacity that we might need to do it justice?
I would find it very difficult to answer at that level, but let me reduce that to a smaller scale. Let's say a good size and good high quality research university in America. Every year, the university may file 50 patents. They would file more, disclosures, of inventions. But the number that they would, actually fund the filing of patents, let's say 50. Out of that, how many spin-outs, would actually happen, in a typical university like that? I venture to say 5 to 10. If you take that as a snapshot, you would say the imbalance is probably 5 to 10 times. It costs so much, and the spinning out, which is doing a Series A financing, that is probably just 5% of what it really takes, to develop the drug all the way, to approval, assuming, it works. If it doesn't work, it just dies on the vine. So that imbalance is huge. And I don't think there's any way that any system, can fully fund everything, nor does it make sense to do that. So the role of a venture capitalist like myself is really a role of, you may say, the market's role of resource allocation. And how do we make those choices? It is a bit of black magic. It's experience. And it's not entirely straightforward. There's no formulaic way, to come to those decisions. And as you know, these companies or these programs, development programs, sometimes they die, they get resuscitated, and then you find something else, and they, like a cat, they have many lives. So it's really hard to say any hard and fast rules, but any movement towards remedying that imbalance would be very much.
I'm going to squeeze in one very short question and very short answer, but it's only because it's Jerry, who's a Mancunian from Hong Kong.
Well, that's precisely what I want to ask Dr. Chan. Could he tell me, for someone who grew up in Hong Kong but has become a Mancunian for many years, would still enjoy the same longevity of life expectancy as it is in Hong Kong?
You don't have to answer that.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch
So he
what
wants
is...
to know, since you've left Hong Kong, you've lived in Boston for 40-odd years, are you going to maintain the same longevity as you would have done if you stayed in Hong Kong?
The jury is still out.
Okay, good answer. Thank you.
I'm not done yet.
So,
Thank you.
So thank you again so much, Gerald. We're now moving on to the honorary degree ceremony. Before that, we're going to show you a short film about industrial biotechnology in Manchester, and this will be followed by our student choir, student-run chamber choir ad solum, singing My Spirit Sang All Day by Gerald Fincy. I will be back shortly. Thank you.
Okay, camera rolling. Okay, are you ready, Nigel?
Sure.
Can you tell us how industrial biotechnology at the University of Manchester is helping to shape the world?
Well, there's food. And of course there's fuel. And there's health. In short, and that's just a few examples. Does that answer your question? Ladies and gentlemen, the honorary degree ceremony will begin shortly. May I ask you to please be upstanding.
Distinguished guests, I'd like to begin by echoing the President and Vice-Chancellor's welcome to you all to this most prestigious of occasions, our Foundation Day celebrations, an integral part of which is, of course, this honorary degree ceremony. I would also like to say how much I enjoyed Dr. Chan's foundation lecture and how proud I am of this university's history and current work, some of which was highlighted in the film we've just seen. I'm also very excited to see what vision emerges for its future. So, it's with great pleasure that I now perform one of my official duties as Chancellor, which is to honour 5 distinguished individuals with the conferment of honorary doctorates. Each of the 5 has, in their diverse fields, contributed hugely to the good of society, and their achievements have had a positive impact way beyond their most immediate spheres of influence. As a recent recipient myself, I can appreciate that. Can I just tell you something? I've got to wear glasses. I just want to share that with you. I'm just at that bridge between the glasses wearer and the non-glasses wearer. But as a recent recipient myself, I can appreciate their significance, being the highest honour that the university can confer. And in conferring the honour, the university is not just recognising these distinguished individuals, it's also making a statement about itself. A university is shaped and defined by the calibre, qualities and personal and professional values and achievements of those who choose and whom it chooses to join its community. Whether as honorary graduates, alumni, students, researchers, teachers, or the many support staff who help to facilitate academic excellence in many ways. The university is therefore being enhanced by the honour that Gerald Chan, Emmanuelle Charpentier, Rachel Haugh, Sarah Lancashire and Chintamani Rao are conferring on us. Put simply, we are honoured by honouring them. In just a moment, the Registrar and Secretary will escort the first of our honorary graduates, Dr. Gerald Chan, onto the platform where Professor Dame Nancy Rothwell will present him. Professor Emmanuelle Charpentier will then be escorted onto the platform and Professor Jane Worthington will present her. Rachel Haugh will then be escorted and Professor Keith Brown will present her. Next, the Registrar and Secretary will escort Sarah Lancashire and Professor James Thompson will present her. Finally, Professor Chintamani Rao will be presented by Professor Martin Schroeder. Before the ceremony ends, Sarah Lancashire will address the congregation on behalf of all our graduates. So it's with real pleasure that I now invite the Registrar and Secretary to escort the first of our honorary graduates, Gerald Chan, onto the platform for the conferment of his honorary degree of Doctor of Science, honoris causa.
So the first thing to say is, Len, we haven't had a selfie yet. I'm presuming that's still to come. Chancellor, distinguished guests, it's a great pleasure to present Dr. Gerald Chan for his honorary doctorate. Gerald's visited us many times, has been very supportive of our university. As he indicated, he has also acquired a slight Mancunian accent, apparently from the builders working on his property in the south of England. And Gerald's favourite phrase now is lovely. I was surprised we didn't hear it in his speech, but I've heard it many a time from him, and we're delighted to welcome you now as not only an honorary graduate of the university, but of course an honorary Mancunian. So Gerald was, as you heard, born in Hong Kong, so it's fantastic that we have visitors from our Hong Kong Foundation, who I noticed while I was up here are each wearing matching university ties. So congratulations. Gerald graduated from UCLA in engineering, then studied radiation biology at Harvard, followed by a postdoctoral position at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. Gerald is a scientist and a businessman with very diverse interests. As you might have guessed from the topic of his foundation lecture, his primary focus has been in biotechnology, with a particular emphasis on startup companies trying to develop new models for the development of new medicines. With his brother Ronnie, Gerald co-founded the Morningside Group, an international investment company. He serves on many boards, centres and universities, including the Chinese University of Hong Kong, which is one of our strategic partners. He's a member of the Global Advisory Council of Harvard University, a distinguished visiting fellow, and a member of the Dean's Board of Advisors at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, which was named in honour of the Chan brothers' late father. Gerald's visionary approach has connected us at the University of Manchester to Harvard to work together on what has been described as the biggest experiment in healthcare of our time, the devolution of the health and social care budget to Greater Manchester, known locally as Devo Manc. Gerald became interested in the implications, challenges and opportunities resulting from this devolved budget of £6 billion a year to Greater Manchester, and feels that there are many lessons to be learned from Devo Manc. He believes that Manchester could be used as a model of real-time observation of social, political, health transformation. He immediately connected us to his colleagues in the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, and we're now forging ahead with a programme of collaborative research. Gerald is a deep thinker about many subjects, and we've had many fascinating conversations. But of particular relevance to this are his views, which you heard a little of, on the role of higher education institutions. He has said in a previous lecture that among all of the causes worthy of philanthropy, serving universities has the greatest leverage, and in the sense of the benefits will be most broadly dispersed and most lasting in time. Gerald's own philanthropic interests cover science, education and religion. He's a director of the Morningside Foundation, which includes support for scholarships for Chinese students, and I've had the pleasure of addressing them. And he has, of course, most notably supported the Harvard School of Public Health in honour of his father. Gerald has been honoured by many leading universities, and I'm delighted that he's accepted our highest honour, and we are indeed honoured to have a friend like Gerald. It's lovely to have you here. Chancellor, I am very pleased to present to you Dr. Gerald Chan for the degree of Doctor of Science Honoris Causa. Gerald.
By virtue of the authority of the University of Manchester, and a great personal pleasure it is to announce you as Doctor of Science Honoris Causa.
Thank you. It's been lovely being here.
Speech is beautiful. Thank you.
Chancellor, distinguished guests, the modern era of genetics is punctuated by a series of landmark discoveries familiar not just to geneticists, but appreciated by society at large. The discovery of the double helix structure of DNA in 1953, Sanger's method to sequence DNA in 1977, polymerase chain technology in 1983, and of course sequencing of the complete human genome in 2003. The most recent landmark discovery, CRISPR-Cas9 genome editing, came just 7 years ago. Professor Emmanuelle Charpentier described a method which allows highly precise, targeted editing of DNA sequence. The method is based on the use of specific enzymes or molecular scissors, which allow deletion or insertion or replacement of DNA at specific sites in the genome. The exciting opportunities created by this precise, cheap, and relatively easy-to-use methodology for discovery science and for wide-ranging translational applications in plant sciences, agriculture, and medicine are now being realised. Emmanuelle gained her PhD in 1995 for investigations on the molecular mechanisms underlying antibiotic resistance at the Pierre and Marie Curie University in Paris. After postdoctoral studies at the Institut Pasteur and 5 years in New York with positions at 3 institutions, Emmanuelle returned to Europe in 2002 to join the University of Vienna as assistant professor and head of her own laboratory in the Department of Microbiology and Immunology. Whilst researching how bacteria use small RNA molecules to regulate expression of their genes, she became aware of clustered, regularly interspersed, short palindromic repeats, or better known, CRISPR. She went on to develop a hypothesis as to the means by which bacteria use CRISPR and the enzyme Cas9 to thwart viral infection. In 2009, Emmanuelle moved to Umeå University in Sweden, where she continued her work to prove her theory, which she published in the journal Nature in 2011. That same year, Emmanuelle teamed up with Jennifer Doudna from the University of California, and together they determined in detail how CRISPR-Cas9 system functioned, reporting this in their joint publication in Science in 2012, in which they also illustrated how it was possible to use tailored RNA to program CRISPR-Cas9 to cut double-stranded DNA at targeted sites, facilitating genome editing of incredible precision. Since then, the scientific world has not been slow to pick up on the potential of this finding, with modifications and improvements to the methodology and an increasing number of examples of how the technology might be used with wide-ranging opportunities to, for example, correct genetic errors that cause disease, potentially resurrect extinct species, to create new and healthier foods, and to eradicate the world's most dangerous pests. In recognition of her outstanding research, Emmanuelle has already been the recipient of numerous international prizes. She has membership of multiple national academies and has received many honorary doctorates. Emmanuelle's story illustrates the importance of investing in basic discovery science, even when the potential for utility or translation is not obvious. As she has illustrated, powerful tools come from unexpected sources. Chancellor, I am very pleased to present to you Emmanuelle Charpentier for the degree of Doctor of Science, honoris causa.
By virtue of the authority vested in me by the University of Manchester, and with great personal pleasure, this is your Doctor of Science. Congratulations. Honoris causa.
Chancellor, distinguished guests, Winston Churchill was not right about everything, but he was correct in observing, we shape our buildings, thereafter they shape us. I never experienced Manchester before the recent period of regeneration that many of you did experience it, while the rest of us have seen the pictures and read the accounts. A grim, uninspiring urban landscape for a declining, downcast population, a metaphor, if you like, for everything negative about post-industrial society and its left-behind inhabitants. I hope I'm not overdrawing that for some of you who live here. That was the setting for the challenge Rachel Haugh set herself as a young Mancunian architect, to breathe life and joy into that dreary, decaying world. There was not a great deal of encouragement for women to enter architecture in the 1980s. An art teacher told Rachel not to waste her time, while in her early years in the profession, she was advised to stick to the velvet trouser brigade, focusing on allegedly more feminine interior design. But Rachel persevered. Having graduated from the University of Bath, she and Ian Simpson co-founded Simpson Haugh Associates in 1987 and went on to become the winner of many awards and accolades. But the early days were not easy. In Rachel's own words, we had no equipment, we had a phone, and we just hoped it would ring. Indeed, throughout the early years, the business made next to no money. There was a day job to pay the bills, while at nights she and Ian worked obsessively to enter competitions in the hope of getting noticed. The first success was to be runners-up in an Alliance and Leicester competition, winning £1,000, which was spent on books. Sadly, the books were left on the train, although I've not been able to find out which of the partners was responsible for that moment of forgetfulness. But Rachel stuck at it, driven by her energy, her vision, and hands-on approach, which even today keeps her intimately involved in every project. Now, Simpson Haugh Associates employs 110 people and has a turnover exceeding £10 million. Now, as many of you will know, the turning point in this story is the early 90s, when the creative energy in Manchester moved up a notch, and the 1996 IRA bomb accelerated the process of renaissance and urban renovation. The breakthrough came with a successful project to save Knott Mill, and what came next is astonishing. Consider the list of achievements. Number 1, Deansgate, early evidence that the post-industrial city could be an aspirational and exciting place in which to live. Exchange Square, New Cathedral Street, Urbis, Beetham Tower, the Library Walk, Granada Studios, 2 St Peter's Square, and today Great Jackson Street and the Owen Street 64-storey luxury tower block, Manchester's biggest skyscraper to date. As the Manchester Evening News put it in 2017, few people have changed the face of Manchester quite so much, which is worth reflecting on if you believe Churchill. And Rachel's reputation has gone beyond Manchester. In London, number 1 Blackfriars, close to the Tate Modern, along with the Battersea Power Station, a testament to her reputation outside this city, even if she has found London to be a little bit slower in getting things done. In all of the above, Rachel's drive and ambition has been to create great architecture, characterized by design excellence and with a commitment to urban renewal and sustainability. In doing so, she's rejected the pessimism of Simon and Garfunkel's So Long, Frank Lloyd Wright, in which they sing, architects may come, architects may go, and never change your point of view. She has literally changed the point of view, transforming how the city of Manchester is perceived. In the novel, The Architect's Apprentice, one character observes, only remember that cities are like human beings. They are not made of stones and wood solely. They are of flesh and bone. They bleed when they are hurt. Rachel clearly has that sensitivity to the city as a living organism shaped by design and by build. Someone else observed, good architecture, gently, and almost inevitably allow you to be you. And therein lies Rachel's legacy to the people of Manchester, a place to be who they truly are. Chancellor, I'm very pleased to present to you Rachel Haugh for the degree of Doctor of Letters Honoris Causa.
It's a total pleasure. I confer upon you on behalf of the University of Manchester, Honorary Doctor of Letters. Congratulations.
Chancellor, distinguished guests, I'm delighted to be offering this citation for Sarah Lancashire's honorary degree, particularly as it's her birthday. When she received her OBE for services to drama from Prince William, she reported that he said he had never seen Happy Valley. Yeah, big sigh. I'm impressed. Well, Sarah, I can promise you, here in Manchester, we have. And like the judges at BAFTA who awarded you the richly deserved Leading Actress Award for your role in the series, all of us here think you were brilliant in it. And while it is but one of the many roles you've done in film, TV, and theatre, it exemplifies your craft and why you are rightly seen as one of the best actors of your generation. Now, I discovered today that you were born in Stretford, and that not Oldham, which I was told, but then moved to Oldham at the age of 4. And she went to the same school as Brian Cox, some other person. This is proof, if you didn't need it, that amazing borough, Oldham of Greater Manchester, produces world-class artists as well as well-known physicists. There's a lot of laughter down here. While you trained at Guildhall in London, you have a strong association with this city. Your first professional roles were at the Library Theatre, which many of us here remember as a great city theatre, now merged with the Corner House to form the new venue Home. While nationally people might remember your 2 BAFTAs, people here know you received a coveted Best Supporting Actress nomination from the Manchester Evening News. Now, we see this honorary degree as somewhere between the BAFTAs and the Evening News nomination. It is a proudly Mancunian recognition for someone we believe is internationally important in her field. Your professional work has been diverse, from West End to film to some of the pioneering TV series that have made you a household name. While in many ways you have and you will continue to inspire future generations of women actors. You are also a symbol of a generation of women cultural professionals who are creating a legacy of incredibly powerful and transformative work for British TV. It's important to acknowledge, for example, in your role as Caroline in Last Tango in Halifax, we saw a groundbreaking portrayal of a same-sex relationship that by all accounts led to more fan mail for you than any other role. But institutionally, we were seeing women leading in all aspects of TV production. And that is certainly an inspiration to students here in Manchester. So we are delighted you're accepting this honorary degree from us today. Chancellor, I'm pleased to present to you Sarah Lancashire for the degree of Letters, honoris causa.
Well, by virtue of the authority of the University of Manchester, Sarah Lancashire, it's an honour to offer you Doctor of Letters. Can we do a selfie in the background? Can we do that? I've just asked for a selfie, and it's all ready. Nancy, I think, would you mind?
It's your birthday.
As it's your birthday, with you lot in the background. Okay, so are you ready? Now we want your best side, which is every side. Oh dear me! Just 1 second. Oh dear me! Final second. Are we okay there? Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chancellor, distinguished guests, Professor C.N.R. Rao is one of the world's foremost solid-state materials chemists and has contributed to the development of this field over almost 6 decades. His work on transition metal oxides and two-dimensional systems has led to major new understanding of the relationship between the structure and properties of materials. He has had a profound impact on many fields, including high-temperature superconductivity, and has made immense contributions to nanomaterials, including hybrid materials, carbon nanotubes, and graphene for water splitting and energy applications. He has many honorary doctorates from around the world, has had an enormous number of awards and prizes, and for my colleagues in humanities present here, I should emphasize that he has co-authored over 1,700 research publications and 52 books. So that, if you work it out, is about 1 book per year and something like 32 publications per annum for almost 60 years. Professor Rao obtained his bachelor's degree from Mysore University and a master's in chemistry from Banaras Hindu University. He completed his PhD from the University of Purdue in 1958 and then joined the Indian Institute of Science at Bangalore. From 1963 to 76, he was professor at the Indian Institute of Technology in Kanpur and was elected Fellow of the Indian Academy of Sciences in 1964. He returned to the Indian Institute of Science in 1976 and was its director from 1984 to 1994. Professor Rao is now a National Research Professor, Linus Pauling Research Professor, and Honorary President of the Nehru Centre for Advanced Scientific Research in Bangalore, which he co-founded in 1989. He's a Fellow of the Royal Society and has won its Royal Medal. He has won the Dan David Prize and Von Hippel Award of the Materials Research Society in the USA and was conferred Chevalier de la Légion d'Honneur by the President of the French Republic in 2005 and the Order of the Rising Sun, Gold and Silver Star by the Emperor of Japan in 2015. He is, I know, very proud of the next award, which is He is the recipient of the highest civilian honour of India, the Bharat Ratna, which translates to the Jewel of India, and he is the only scientist to have won this award. He has carried out enormous leadership across India and developed the science and technology of that great country for decades, and he has built institutes, built research groups, and published enormous outputs of great impact. We are delighted that Professor Rao, one of the founding fathers of 2D materials, has accepted this honorary doctorate from the University of Manchester. He is developing a Mancunian accent as I speak, and we welcome him also to the home of graphene and the world-leading Centre for 2D Materials. Chancellor, I'm delighted to present to you Chintamani Rao for the degree of Doctor of Science honoris causa.
Congratulations. By virtue of the authority vested in me by the University of Manchester, and with great personal pleasure, this is your Honorary Doctor of Science. Thank you. Pardon? 70. Wow. Wow. Congratulations. Thank you. His 79th honorary doctorate. The best one. Sorry. Dr. Sarah Lancashire, on behalf of the honorary graduands, would you deliver to the congregation your speech? Thank you.
Chancellor and distinguished guests, I have been given the duty of replying on behalf of myself and my fellow honorary graduates. And I would like to say how honoured we are to be a part of this wonderful occasion, and how immensely proud we are to be recognised by the university in this way. This is an rather erudite assembly. It's a daunting and rather overwhelming task, considering the combined academic and professional achievements of my fellow graduates. Our experiences may be extraordinarily diverse, but there is one thing on which we can all agree. There are 77 shopping days left until Christmas. 77 days in which madness and mayhem will ensue, accompanied by loss of all sense and reasoning, the odd box of mince pies and rogue Christmas pudding has already appeared in the seasonal aisle at my local supermarket. Yet safe within these four rather beautiful walls, sense and reasoning prevails and has proved a winning formula for thousands of students who have successfully graduated over the decades, their future shaped by hard work and opportunity. Indeed, 30 years ago, my own twin, happy birthday, Simon, graduated as a Doctor of Medicine from this same hall, witnessed by myself and our grandfather, who was then nearly 90 years old. His name was Daniel Bartholomew McCormack, a beautiful, proud, and dignified man with an unparalleled zest for life and learning, and yet his start in life had been far from privileged. An Irish immigrant. A new life awaited him,
At the age of 3, accompanied by his parents and his siblings, he travelled to Liverpool by boat. The First World War broke out. At 12, he was forced to leave school to take work at the Liverpool docks to support his family, while his father was away patrolling the North Sea. After an apprenticeship as a carpenter and joiner, he became a boat builder. He made small wooden boats, but simultaneously, he continued his lost education at night school. He studied sciences and English and languages, and eventually took his higher nationals. He came to Manchester in 1938, where he resided until his death. And whilst raising a family, he took his civil service exams, eventually working his way through the Ministry of Works, until he was in charge of the maintenance of all the government buildings in Manchester, including having the responsibility to decree when the flags should be flown at half-mast. Nothing was laid at his feet. He was an enthusiast with a strong sense of duty who believed in making the very best of oneself. His dress was immaculate, his manners impeccable, and his curiosity limitless. Even after retirement, he continued at night school, learning French and German. He was an avid reader. He read every Shakespeare play. He never stopped learning. I wrote this speech sitting at my grandfather's bureau, a bureau he had salvaged and rebuilt. Rather poignant, perhaps, for a man who craved knowledge. A bureau where my mother and her brothers had done their homework, and where I and my brothers did our homework. Chancellor, I would like to dedicate this honour to the memory of my grandfather, Daniel Bartholomew McCormack, and his hard-earned education. Thank you.
Doctors Chan, Charpentier, Haugh, Lancashire and Rao. On behalf of the university, I would like to extend warmest congratulations on your honorary doctorates and to offer each of you our very best wishes for the future. I now declare the ceremony closed.